Tuesday, September 10th edition of the Just Baseball Show. You've got Jack McMullen and me, RM Layton, and we've got plenty of topics to go through. Jasson Dominguez, a few days later, he's ready to go for the Yankees. He gets the call up. The Mets and the Braves are finally tied as we look at this race for the final wild card spot in the National League. On that topic, unfortunately, Jeff McNeil hurt, might be done for the rest of the regular season. Gavin Stone hits the IL. And I know we talked about it before, but it looks like it's like a double IL rotation now. You could fill out two over there in LA, unfortunately. Trevor Story on the positive side is coming back. Bichette starting to make his desires a little bit more known. Little Jerry Dipoto conversation and some very notable prospect promotions as we get into the final stretch of the minor league season, of course, as well. As always, this entire episode and all of these episodes are brought to you by BetMGM. Be sure to use that promo code or that link in the episode description to reap the rewards of what you can get by using Just Baseball. It's code Just Baseball. I think it's still the $1,500, up to $1,500, no sweat bet, essentially, right? You put it down on something, it loses, you get that money back in bonus bets, and you get to try again, which is always nice. We like mulligans, especially when you're trying to predict the future on sports. But Jack, what do you feel like we should start with? Of course, it's probably got to be Jasson Dominguez, right? Since 4 days ago, not ready. Yankees fans, full-fledged outcry. Now he's here. And we did talk about why we thought maybe he could use a little bit more time. Obviously, thought he probably needed a little bit more time than this. But here we are. And this is also a reason why you can't freak out right at the September call up, like the first date where rosters expand, because they can bring him up whenever. He's on the 40-man already. And here he is. He had a few more good games under his belt. Got a little bit more time to get his feet back under him after coming off of the IL with that oblique. That was after the IL stint with the elbow. And now he's presumably ready to go for the Yankees.
Yeah, this is another chance to reiterate that September 1 is not the final day of the regular season to make a transaction. The transaction on the 9th, on Monday, was Duke Ellis being optioned. Duke Ellis was the guy that was either selected or recalled. I think he was selected on September 1. So he was the September call-up for the Yankees in the outfield. And now Dominguez is ready. And we made the point on September 1, when Dominguez did not come up, that he might have needed a little bit more time to get his feet back under him after the Tommy John recovery and after the oblique recovery. We were a game off? He's played 7 games in the month of September. We said 10 games, maybe 3 games off. We were. In 7 games in the month of September, this guy has 9 hits, 2 homers, and in 28 ABs, he's got a 948 OPS, 34 plate appearances and 948 OPS. All he needed was another week of playing every day, getting right, treated like an elongated rehab assignment. You look at big leaguers that miss 4 months of the season compared to a month of the regular season. If a guy misses 3 weeks to a month and he goes on a rehab assignment, we're talking about a guy that is going to play 7 innings. He's going to sit. He's going to play 7 innings. He's going to play 9 innings. He's going to sit, and he's going to play 9 innings, and then he's back. With a guy that's missed 4 months, we're talking about using the 20 days for a hitter that you were allotted. And there's no reason to limit Jasson's ramp up to 20 days when you have this option available and when you have Alex Verdugo holding down a starting outfield spot. Now, Verdugo has been playing very poorly. I know that. I don't think a single Yankee fan I'm breaking any news to with that. But at the end of the day, you had this opportunity to give Dominguez a bit more runway to ramp up. And he's ramped up at this point.
Yeah. And, again, maybe could have used a few more games, maybe not. He clearly was swinging it better. And I love the point that you mentioned. A few days does make a big difference. That's why we have rehab assignments that sometimes are only a few days. And with Dominguez, the EVs were down. We talked about all that stuff. A player that's as young as him as well, and I've talked to guys about the oblique thing, it's also building trust back into that oblique where it's, okay, I can cut loose on my swing and not be afraid that I'm going to re-aggravate that thing. And that's exactly what I think we started to see him do a little bit more of as well, is just cut loose and trust it. I will say, even in those more positive games of late, still expanding a little bit. So that's something to note, because I think when he's at his best, he's shown through flashes that he can be selective. And we saw him cut that chase rate down, and down. as he's progressed through the minor leagues. So that's something to monitor because, of course, at the big league level, they're going to try to take advantage of that, try to get him to expand more. But other than that, I mean, you really started to see him come back into his own. And when he's been on the field, it's over the last 2 years, it's been really darn good ever since he made that adjustment. When he got from low A to high A and really settling into high A, there were some swing adjustments there, and he really hasn't looked back since, aside from the physical ailments that he has dealt with. So this is a guy that, look, is it fair to expect him to come in and save the day? No, but when we talked about X factors for playoff contenders, I floated Jasson Dominguez because this was a position when you look at corner outfield, he's going to play left. He is a guy that can plug into center though if you ever need it, which is nice as well. But he's been predominantly playing left, I think, in preparation for this as well, while mixing in a start every third or fourth game in center field. It's a guy that's going to give you a lot more than what you've been getting from Alex Verdugo, both from the power perspective, what he's capable of producing in general as a hitter, and then also the fact that he can run. I think he just gives you a lot more upside and impact across the board in what he could potentially do. But the flip side of that is, hey, you probably can't expect him to do all that. Like it wouldn't be totally fair, but he's a guy that I think at this point is pretty used to having unfair expectations placed on him. It's nice that now he has a stretch of, a handful of good games as he gets up there that carry some momentum at the big league level. And believe it or not, man, this guy's still just 21 years old. So it's going to be fun to see how he looks. I think it's enough time for them to decide, based on how he performs over the next few weeks, what they may want his presumed role to be at the, in the playoffs potentially when the Yankees get there and all that good stuff. So more than enough games to kind of figure that all out. But I mean, what would be a fair expectation, you think, for Dominguez now in these few weeks? And do you think maybe even with the struggles that he has had against left-handed pitching as a right-handed hitter, you think maybe in this spot that they actually don't play him as much maybe against lefties, or do you think they just let him go full bore?
So good question. I actually had a thought that didn't pertain to Dominguez. It was just the bar that he needs to clear. And like, no disrespect to Alex Verdugo, but it's a pretty damn low bar. 43 games since the All-Star break. Verdugo's OPSing 610 in 43 games. We just need him to do better than that.
Yeah.
And I think he can. I think a low 700s OPS, I think a 100 WRC plus is my expectation for Jasson Dominguez. And I think that he can meet that, man. Do I think that he can turn in a 140 WRC plus in the final 3 weeks of the season? I don't think so, to be honest. I think he's missed too much time to hit the ground and really be dominant. But I think that he can be a league average offensive piece, which is a hell of a lot better than what you're getting from Verdugo right now. And dude, like he's dynamic. We know that. He can provide, defensive value. He can provide value on the base pass. He'll get on the bases a lot more than Verdugo has. 43 games since the All-Star break. Part of that 610 OPS for Verdugo is a 301 on base. I'm asking him to get on base more. I'm asking him to slug a little bit more. And I think he can do that. And the Yankees are in the business of putting their best foot forward from September 10th through the end of the regular season and into the postseason. And that best foot forward will probably have Dominguez in it.
And, we talk about the impact that Jazz Chisholm has made for them, right? Where he adds speed and just gives them another dynamic aspect that they've kind of been lacking. And Dominguez is going to do that as well. Whereas Verdugo, when he's not really hitting, it's how else is he really going to help you? Whereas Dominguez, draws a walk, could potentially steal second. Again, he's going to need to be more patient because I think that's going to be a big key for him here. But stole 10 bags in his last 21 games, at the AAA level. And they need more speed in that lineup as well. So just being able to add that to the fold also, I think is quite valuable. And with a guy that just, again, is comfortable to be able to plug into center field. If you want to mix and match, if you're late in games with different substitutions and everything, just having that capability, I think is quite nice as well. And I do think though, if they don't really put him out there, I think in the grand scheme, you want to put him out there on the right side as well. But just in terms of trying to put him in positions for success and really just focusing on winning ball games here, trying to win the division and trying to make a run in the playoffs. If he is not hitting from the right side, I do think you could see like a 115, maybe even if he really, really clicks a 120 WRC plus. But I agree with your notion there where actually was more confident last year because of the momentum that he was
Yeah.
riding up to his big league debut. And we saw in the handful of games how good he looked. But, with how disrupted this year has been, I think you can't really draw anything one way or another if he does struggle. I think if he performs, you can draw something from that. So maybe not one way or another. But I think, it should be reasonable expectations for Dominguez because I think it's very easy for fans to lose sight of maybe how tumultuous this year has been for him from a physical standpoint. And, just I can't imagine the physical aspect while you're trying to also prove that you're ready to contribute at the big league level, which I think
Mm.
results in a little bit more pressing to make up for lost time, which is why you're seeing him be more aggressive. Like there's a lot of wrinkles to this. So maybe a more relaxed Jasson Dominguez, who knows he's going to be there hopefully for the rest of the year,
Yeah.
will be a bit more patient at the plate because that's really the main thing I want to see from him.
And he's stepping into a massive 3-week stretch for the New York Yankees, dude. Like, month too, if you want to include the wild card series and the divisional series, whatever he gets to play in and whatever the Yankees, get to participate in. This is big. And it's not just Sunday night baseball in Williamsport. I was about to say Cooperstown, but Williamsport. Like, it's not a one-off, man. This is 3 weeks where he can really show his value over 3 weeks. And I mean, this is the same guy that told a stranger who asked him if he's a Yankee in the Philly airport that he was the Martian and he's out of this world when he was making his way to New York for his major league debut. Don't forget that this guy loves the big moment and
Yeah.
loves the Martian moniker. So he's ready for this, I do think.
Going over to the National League side,
Yeah.
in the wild card, it just got a lot more interesting. And it's going to be very fun, I think, down these final couple weeks here. You got two teams, I wouldn't say trending in opposite directions, but just the general feeling is that way because of the way that they are performing, maybe in regards to the expectations. You get the Braves and the Mets tied in that final wild card spot.
Yeah.
And right now, the way that the wild card shakes out, you got the Padres at 81-64, which is pretty remarkable considering that they've been kind of over the last 10, 5-5, lost two in a row, but they're comfortably, 2 games ahead at that top spot. Then you have the Diamondbacks, who are just a half game behind them. The NL West is just crazy right now, who have also not really been playing their best ball of late, 4-6 in their last 10, but they're 80-64, and they've got a little bit of breathing room, but it's not that much. It could go very quickly, but relatively speaking, a little bit of breathing room here. And then you've got the Braves and the Mets duking it out here for the final spot, both sitting at 78-65. The Mets, though, have really closed this gap. It's not like the Braves have been catastrophically bad over the last 10. They're 5-5.
Yep.
But you've got the Mets who are 9-1 to now get themselves tied with the Atlanta Braves. You and I just drafted playoff rotations or playoff rotations for playoff contenders. And if I'm not mistaken, the Mets were not selected.
They were not picked. We had 12 selections, a pool of 13 teams, and the Mets were the team that wasn't picked.
They were the odd men out. But here they are, putting up zeros quite often on the scoreboard and also just swinging it. Where are you at now at this point?
Yeah.
Are you fully in on this? Like, are the Mets going to do this thing? And I want this to be more of a tip of the cap to the Mets.
Yeah.
And I think an indictment on the Braves, who have just had tough luck this year from an injury perspective. Could they be playing better? Sure. Especially with the pitching staff that they have. Mike Harris could be performing a little bit better, but another guy that's been banged up all year. Yeah, they lose Albies. Of course, Acuna's been out for a long time. I think this should be more of a, wow, the Mets really did this. Like, they didn't fizzle. They are finishing this strong. Are you buying this? I mean, you can't really sell it because there's only so many games left and they're right here.
Right.
But are you fully buying that this is happening and they're the favorite? Or are you still saying that the Braves are the favorite the rest of the way here?
Yeah, I mean, this is the vibes play. Like, they are the vibes team in Major League Baseball right now. They won 9 in a row. They got to an 8-game winning streak on that Mark Vientos 2-run walk-off on Friday night after Edwin Diaz in the 9th struck out the side in order and looked like the Edwin Diaz that was so far and away the best closer in Major League Baseball in 2022 before he got hurt celebrating in the WBC. I think Peter put it really well. My brain says the Braves. My heart is gravitating towards the Mets because it's been so much fun and it's been so electric in New York. That's kind of where I stand too. Having said that, I think the Braves needed a shot in the ass. And they got that on Sunday afternoon. That was an ugly, ugly win over Toronto in 11. The Braves plated 1 in the second. Toronto plated 2 in the top of the 8th to take a 2-run lead. Braves tied it in the bottom of the ninth, and they win the game on a fielder's choice or on like a throw coming home, a do or die play with the infield pulled in with 2 runs in the bottom of the 11th. The Braves somehow figured out a way to win that game, or the Blue Jays might have lost that game. I don't know what it was, but they needed that Sunday afternoon so badly, and they needed to see themselves in the win column and the Mets in the loss column.
Yep.
Otherwise, I would have said these two are working in total opposite directions, like kind of led into this conversation with, and I would have been all Mets. That
Yeah.
Sunday afternoon sort of kind of saved the Atlanta Braves, in my opinion.
I don't hate that because it also is a pretty tough schedule the rest of the way for the New York Mets. I mean, they're going to go to Toronto as well now. So you got to take 2 out of 3 there now. And that's not too bad though. I mean, the Jays have been playing better ball since going young, but still, I mean, that's not ever easy going to Canada. Then you got the Phillies in Philly. And that's a team that very much wants to get right. Just split with the Marlins. I'm sure they're not thrilled about that either. Lost a couple games that they should have won. And then, or at least should have performed better in from a pitching matchup perspective.
Right.
And then it does get a little bit easier where they've got a 3-game set against against the Nationals. But then guess what? You got 4 more against the Phillies. And then you got 3 more against the Braves, which is great. You want to go head to head and beat them.
Yeah.
That's in Atlanta. And then you finish the season with 3 in Milwaukee, which I think if you're a Mets fan, you're hoping that those games don't matter for Milwaukee. But even
I don't think they will. I don't think they're going to matter. I think everybody is solidified.
So sometimes that almost works against you, but you'd hope that works for them and helps them there. But even then, like you got 7 more games against the Phillies, who have plenty of reason I think to still perform pretty well and get themselves right. And then you got 3 against the Braves in Atlanta. So that's a pretty tough stretch there. And I think it is kind of one of those things where if the Mets keep doing what they're doing, they'd probably beat anybody right now. And, just to play the devil's advocate, it's not like the Braves have a cakewalk either. They got a makeup game against Cincinnati. That's today as we're recording this on the 9th. But then they've got 2 against the Nationals in Washington. Yeah, it's whatever. But then they got 4 against the Dodgers, 3 in Cincinnati, 3 in Miami. So those are the ones that you really want to win.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get those 3 against the Mets that we mentioned. And then they finish out the season with 3 against the Royals, which, again, do those games end up mattering? Will end up being a big part of it, right? Is how much do the Brewers and the Royals care in those final 3 ball games?
I think the Royals are going to care, man. Like, I think we're going to be in a jostle in the American League until the tail end of this whole thing. I have no idea what to make of the American League wild card. And frankly, like, Cleveland hasn't put that division away entirely just yet.
No.
So I think those games might very well end up mattering. For Milwaukee, I don't think they're going to end up mattering, but in Kansas City against Atlanta, I think those games are going to matter at the tail end.
So I guess just to tie the bow on this, like, what do you think the Mets need to do to keep this thing rolling? And on the flip side, what do you think the difference maker is for the Braves at this point? They're pitching. Like, they're going to keep getting those zeros. I think it clearly just is offense beyond Marcel. But with the Mets, like, is this just a horseshoe up their ass stretch? Or are things clicking and we can count on quality starts from David Peterson and whoever it may be that just seems to go out there and give them a shot every single 5th day?
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of take us into our next thing in Jeff McNeil, because I think the Jeff McNeil injury really hurts. And McNeil is out for the entirety of the season here with a wrist fracture. I think they need offense to spell McNeil. And McNeil has been so good in the second half. Spell McNeil's absence. I know McNeil started pretty slowly, right? But after the All-Star break, he ticked up and has been a monster. Vientos has been a monster too. Vientos needs to be more of a monster. Lindor needs to make this thing a conversation with Ohtani. And I know we've talked about that on the last 2 shows. Nimmo needs to step it up. Nimmo's hitting 229 on the year. Like, I want to see Nimmo perform like that firmly 9-figure outfielder that the New York Mets made him. And then Alonso, dude, like, I want this offense to be fucking awesome throughout it has to be. And listen, dude, like, everything I've seen from Sevy has been great. Everything I've seen from Sean Manaea has been great. Peterson, been good, dude.
He has a 2.75 and 98 in the 3rd innings. I don't care if you think it's sustainable or not or whatever. He's doing it right now.
I
do it a few more times.
I admitted on the Monday show that I'm officially turning a corner on Tobias Myers. I turned a corner on Colin Ray last week. And I think that's exactly David Peterson is in the Tobias Myers, Colin Ray clumping, where you shouldn't be this good, but you are this good. And at some point, I need to acknowledge that you are this
Yes,
good. And that's David Peterson right now.
that's valid.
Quintana has been really solid over his last few as well. The starting rotation is actually pretty low on my totem pole when it comes to things that I need to see be right for the New York Mets to secure this postseason berth. I think 1 and 2 here are Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso. Those are 1 and 2 for me.
How about reliever Jose Budo, by the way? I feel like he's
Yeah.
not getting enough love at all. Reliever Jose Budo has been kind of a dog. So
They've got something there. I don't know if it's as the 5-starter or as a reliever, but they have something there in Budo.
So, I mean, from that lens alone, it's been fun to watch this team exceed expectations in what was supposed to be a bridge year.
Yeah.
And I think the big aspect of this as well, I think, and you touched on it off the top of this subject here, was Edwin Diaz. If Edwin Diaz is looking like the guy that was the best reliever in baseball and most dominant we had seen in some time here, that absolutely makes a difference, right? Like you still have to hit. Your starting pitchers still have to do their thing too. But when the game becomes 8 innings for you instead of 9, that definitely makes things a lot easier for their manager as well. And we joked about, him being a managerial superstar. Well, I forget who came out and made that quote.
I don't remember either, but I know that it was
the Mets
said
have a managerial superstar on their hands. I still will never call a manager a superstar.
because
However,
they're making $8 million a year.
yeah, Craig Counsell was supposed to be a superstar, right? I will say though, you gotta give some credit to what's going on here. I think from top to bottom, because there's clearly some buy-in from this ball club that could have easily faded in the dog days, and here they are pushing and trying to finish strong. And we'll see how it all looks, but I think really what it comes down to is I really do think it's whether the Braves can win the winnable games, because they've got those 7 against bad teams, the Nationals and the Marlins. If they can win 6 out of those 7, it's going to be hard for the Mets to match that.
In Cincinnati, that 3-game set in Cincinnati before you go to Miami, the Braves go 5-1 in that 6-game set. It might be GG's.
Yeah. So that's a big part of it. Real quick on McNeil, you mentioned the injury. That does hurt. I think if there was a position where that would happen, this is probably the easiest for them to plug somebody else in, considering how music superstar and pop star Jose Iglesias has hit this year. Yeah. And I keep waiting for it to normalize, but we're at 210 plate appearances. The guy's hitting 314, can still really pick it well at second. So, I don't think he's going to give you what McNeil was giving you in the second half here as he starts to play every day. But I don't think you're going to be like in one of those spots where it's, what the hell do we do? Who do we put in here now? Like, you clearly have a very solid option who will plug in, hit at the bottom of the lineup and go from there.
Can I ask you who the collab is going to be with Jose Iglesias this offseason? Is it going to be Bad Bunny? Is it going to be Mike Towers? Like, there's going to be
it's going to be Bad Bunny. It's got to be. After his agency kind of fell through there. This is a new way back into baseball.
It is
Find the musician. Sign the you can't sign players for whatever reason. MLB stonewalled his whole operation there. I don't know what was going on, but that's a whole story.
Got players. Why can't Bad Bunny have players?
I agree. I don't know what was wrong. I don't know what he did wrong, but they really made it very difficult for him to be able to operate. Here's your way in. Sign them to record deals.
Yeah, why not?
Maybe that's the way to go.
Easy.
We'll move on to the next topic here, which is unfortunately another injury. Yeah. And it is kind of leads into a larger conversation of how does this thing look now as we move forward? We were just talking about the Dodgers rotation, and even though it's decimated, how they have some insurance policies that can make you feel a little bit better about some of the uncertainty that you have. One of those policies, and I think the best policy that they had, just went down and Gavin Stone. And so you get Yamamoto back, but it just feels like it's been that revolving door for the Dodgers where Yamamoto is going to come back. And as you're listening to this, he's going to make his first start since hitting the IL with the shoulder issue today. Mm-hmm. But now with Gavin Stone on the injured list with shoulder inflammation, and I imagine that with shoulder inflammation, that he ain't coming back too quickly, but we'll see. Yeah. There goes your insurance policy. When we were saying, well, how does Yamamoto look when he comes back? Hopefully Walker keeps doing what he's doing, and we love to see what he's doing. But that's another just one of those where it's like let's see how it goes. Bobby Miller has looked really rough this year. He's got a 7.79 ERA. And then we're waiting for Glasnow to come back. We're waiting to see what the deal is with Kershaw's toe. It just feels like every time the reinforcements come, another piece falls off.
Let's play a game. I'm going to include Yamamoto for the sake of the exercise. There are 10 starting pitchers for the LA Dodgers that are now on the injured list. And Kentucky ran out a team blue and a team white when they went, one loss into the national championship game, or undefeated into the national championship game, or maybe Final Four when they lost to Wisconsin. That was like, team one was like Karl Anthony Towns, the Harrison twins, and then team two was the one with Devin Booker on it. It was like Booker, Tyler Eulis, Alex Poitras was there. But I'm going to put together rotation 1, rotation 2, and you tell me which rotation is better, just based on guys that are hurt right now. Yamamoto, Kershaw, Dustin May, Emmett Sheehan, Nick Frasso. Team 2, Glasnow, Gonsolin, River Ryan, Gavin Stone, Kyle Hurt. It's tough, right? I try to make them as even as possible.
I got to go team 1.
Yeah, fair.
But both of those rotations would be top 5 in baseball.
I know.
Like with full health, like don't forget how good Dustin May was, and hopefully will be when he comes back. Emmett Sheehan was one of my favorite breakout arms for this year. River Ryan looked like he was ready to be a dude. It's just wild. And Kershaw, like, actually was throwing the ball pretty well before the toe thing. Like, he started to seem like he was settling in. I'll go team 1 there, but it's sneaky close, and both of those are disgusting.
Disgusting, man. Like, I'm looking at a best case scenario situation where in the postseason you can run out a Yoshinobu Yamamoto, a Glasnow, a Kershaw, a Stone, a Buehler, and I haven't mentioned Jack Flaherty. Bobby Miller is sitting there like twiddling his thumbs. It's crazy what they can do at full health, but we just haven't seen it at full health.
And in that IL rotation, you didn't even mention Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, there you go.
Also one of the best in Major League Baseball. So he would have tipped the scales either way, whichever team you would have put him on. So I guess looking at the rotation now, let's assume Yamamoto's back and he's 80% of what, we saw from him, which is, a 2.92 ERA. So let's say he's pitching like a 3.3 guy.
Yeah.
You got Flaherty at the top. And I think right now, depending on when Glasnow comes back and everything, for the sake of argument, let's say Glasnow is not available.
Yeah.
Flaherty's your game 1 starter.
No doubt.
Then game 2 goes to Yamamoto.
Yeah.
And then game 3, it's kind of whoever looks good in the next 4 starts, right? Or 3 starts.
Yeah, like I would say Buehler, because Buehler has proven it in the postseason. Like, Buehler is a big game performer. So I would say Buehler gets game 3. And I would say, dude, like, maybe you use Knack as an opener. And then Miller as the long man, or Bobby on a very short leash in game 4 as it stands right now.
Landon Knack just became a heck of a lot more important.
Very, very. And he has been impressive in his big league stretch. I've been very encouraged by Landon Knack.
So we have another rotation conversation here.
Yes.
And I don't even fully actually know what you wanted to talk about here. You just have Ray's rotation.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to give you the floor.
So Jeffrey Springs just hit the IL again.
Oh, yeah.
Springs is on the shelf. Springs hit the shelf with elbow fatigue. This is on the heels of his Tommy John recovery. So you just assume that it's not feeling right.
Hopefully that's just hey, I'm feeling it a little bit. Like, let's just slow it down. I'm hoping that's all it is.
Exactly. Drew Rasmussen got 5 outs out of the bullpen on Sunday. I want to say it was either Saturday or Sunday. So I wanted to have the 2025 rotation conversation, because you are assuming a fully healthy Rasmussen, a fully healthy Springs, and a McClanahan that's ready to go, joining this grouping. So I wanted to kick it over to you and just simply ask you, what is the Tampa Bay Rays 5-man starting rotation when they break camp in 2025? There are 7 guys that you can turn to.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because Peopot's back.
Dipoto has looked really good. 5 1/3, 1 run over the weekend.
Like, Zach Wittell, I know he's not the best pitcher in the world, but he's pretty darn good. He's 3.90 ERA, but how about the fact that he's walking 31 and 138 and 2/3 innings. The big part of this too is talk about how nobody on the Rays ever throws a lot of innings. Here's a guy that's going to throw close to 150 for you, and with really strong strikeout to walk numbers. But it feels like he's almost the odd man out here, right? Where, I mean, if you're looking Taj Bradley, I know he's hit a wall, but he's got his spot. Shane Baz, he's got his spot. You mentioned McClanahan, he'll be back. He's got his spot. They're going to want to build up. The whole plan and what they've said is that Rasmussen will be a starter next year. But that's one thing that I could see them maybe reevaluate.
Mhm.
I don't know. And I think based on your rotation situation, it may not be a bad idea to reevaluate Rasmussen. If Rasmussen is throwing really well out of the pen, we're talking about a guy that's had 3 elbow procedures here. Of course, I'd love to see him stretch back out and be a starter, and I'm sure he would too. But if you already have this wealth here and you have all of these arms, maybe it's not a bad idea to have him in that rotation, getting those 5-6 out type of appearances. And then, or sorry, not in the rotation, the bullpen. And then from there, if you want to, potentially if someone goes down, you want to plug him in and build him back up a little bit, you could do that. The other side of it is we're talking about several pitchers here who are working back off of issues, right? Like where Shane Baz is still going to have an innings limit next year. You're going to have an innings restriction on McClanahan. You're going to have an innings restriction on Springs. You're definitely going to have an innings restriction on a Drew Rasmussen. Do you go 6-man rotation? I know that's kind of against what they would probably want to do with their roster spots, but considering how unique this is, where all of your guys that are coming back are coming off of pretty significant issues, maybe a 6-man rotation would make a lot of sense as well.
And man, like Bradley could use a 6-man rotation too, because you're going to build up his innings naturally, and we're going to be in a good position here. I do think the depth is an exceptional problem to have. I just wonder what it's going to look like. So the 6-man rotation next year, McClanahan gets the ball opening day. That's a foregone conclusion. So McClanahan, assuming health, is the one. Bradley is in that rotation, like you said, Baz, and then Springs, Rasmussen, Pepio, and Littell is the swingman is the 7th.
Like I think Pepio's got to have that spot even ahead of
Rasmussen.
The thing is when you look back at what Rasmussen was doing as a starter before
I
the
know.
injury, like this guy was one of the more impressive arms in baseball for almost 200 innings, right? Actually, over 200 innings if you go back to 2021 when he was kind of swingman doing both. But 28 starts in 2022 just reminded everybody here we saw him pitch to a 2.84 ERA, and then in his 44 2/3 before going down in 2023 was a 2.62. So that is a guy that probably has to get a spot if they fully are prepared to just roll him back out there.
Yeah.
But I just feel like somebody like Ryan Pepio may not play as well out of the pen. And I think is better when he's pitching to contact, getting ground balls and whatever it may be. And clearly Rasmussen's comfortable out of the pen. It's going to be a really fun conversation. And it's not like they need Rasmussen in the pen when you got Hunter Biggie doing what he's doing already now. Edwin Uceta has turned into one of the best relievers in baseball.
Yeah.
And I mean, Manuel Rodriguez has a low 2s. Like they've got guys throwing. So I think it's going to be one of the more fascinating conversations going into next season. And in true Rays fashion, they may just trade one of these guys.
Yeah.
And I think that could be a side of this as well, where maybe they cash in here and convert one of these arms around the 40-man deadline into some lower level prospects, or maybe to some offensive help as well.
I wonder who that would be that they cash in on. And I'm pulling up Spotrac right now.
That's what I was going to look at too. It's so funny how with the Rays, that's the first. You don't pull up the stats.
No,
you pull up Spotrac immediately.
So Springs is set to make 10.5 next year, 10.5 in 26, but his value is depleted at this point because he's coming off Tommy John and he just hit the shelf because he wasn't fully ready.
But if somebody takes that contract, that might be enough for them.
I know. Part of me is thinking Baz could be the man on the move. You get 3 years of Shane Baz.
What about Littell with only 1 more year of control? He's an ARB3 in 2025. He's going to be
so cheap. He's making 185 this year.
Cheap.
He might make 2.5 or 3 next year. And like, you want to keep that.
I think Springs, man. I think, and I'll be honest, like he's been solid. He looks pretty good. He's looked, and it might just take more time as he gets further away from Tommy John. But He does. The stuff has looked a little subdued compared to what we're used to. So, I mean, that could be the guy, but then that's their only lefty in the rotation. You're not keeping Tyler Alexander in there.
Right.
So it's a conversation. And I'm very interested to see how they go about it. But I do think with Springs at 10 million, look, teams will jump at the opportunity to add that. I mean, we talk, I always use the Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn example, where you're getting those guys, you're paying them 13, 14 mil, like, or 12, whatever it may be. I think Springs could end up being a guy that they just dump that contract, and teams would still happily sign up for him at $10 million.
Can I throw a surprise topic at you?
Yes, sir.
For Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News.
Oh, let me guess. Can I
Rocker,
guess? I haven't looked. Kumar Rocker getting called up?
Kumar Rocker being promoted. He's going to start on Thursday in Seattle.
Let's go.
Dude.
That's fun. Talk about rotations for 2025, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a fun one.
Yeah, a little DeGrom lighter rocker action. With Malley under control as well.
Yeah.
Cody Bradford slinging
Scherzer looked good in his rehab.
Man, that's crazy that Kumar is coming up at this point. How many minor league innings is that?
This year or just total?
Total.
Total, I got you in a few. Do we count the Arizona Fall League?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if we count the Arizona Fall League, he has thrown 78 and 2/3 minor league innings.
Wow.
But I think even crazier than that is the fact that he has thrown a total of 29 and 2/3 innings above high A.
Wow.
And you know what? I think it is the 150% right move. Why waste any more bullets in the minors? There's nothing I need to see from this guy anymore to think that he's ready. This guy, 7 starts, by the way, between AA and AAA since coming off of the IL with Tommy John surgery, finally just taking care of that arm. And I think he's been trying to throw through a lot of different things. He's sitting 98 miles an hour with his fastball. And he's also throwing strikes with the best of them. Every single outing is just quality. And he just had his worst outing of the year in Las Vegas, where the ball flies. 5 innings, 3 hits, 2 runs, so home run, 1 walk, 8 Ks. I think that the thing that's most remarkable is the 47 strikeouts and 4 walks. You know that stuff's going to play. The fastball's plus, the slider's plus, and he manipulates the slider into variations of, it's like 3 different pitches with the way that he can manipulate it. And he has 2 different fastballs. He's got the sinker to pitch to contact, get ground balls. He's got the 4-seamer at the top. I think he's just going to go up there and I think do a lot of the same. Well, you have a couple of times maybe where guys just get to him. Maybe he misses a spot and they make him pay with a home run or 2, sure. But I think he's going to go out there and give them quality starts. So why not get him that taste now? The Rangers are clearly a team that's focused on winning now. I know that this year didn't go the way they wanted it to, but it's World Series or bust next year too for them. Wouldn't you rather have Kumar kind of get his feel up there now and you also get a feel for Kumar as you get ready for next year and try to figure out what that rotation is going to look like?
That I'm just stuck on how cool this is. Leiter and Kumar teammates again in the big leagues. And I root for very few people as hard as I do for Kumar Rocker, just because of the whole Mets thing and the whole draft thing and going to pitch an indie ball for a little bit just to prove that your arm is still attached to your body and then going through Tommy John immediately after. I also root for Jack Leiter very hard because this guy essentially had to go back to the drawing board after AA struggles. He repeated AA as the number 2 overall pick. And there were so many people that wanted to dunk on him for no effing reason after he had 2 bad starts this year in the big leagues. This tandem is as likable a pitching tandem as you will find in baseball. And I'm so excited to see them bloom in tandem at the same time.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned just like the likable aspect too. They're competitors on the mound, but being fortunate enough to meet both and know both. Like, I don't know Kumar that well, but that was a fun interview. And I honestly, we talked about it. I was expecting him to be a little bit more intense and like not that warm. Really thoughtful answers, really smart pitching mind as well. And just a cool dude. And I know that we talked about it, I think either on the call up or earlier in here, they both were like, yeah, I'm looking forward to playing with Jack. And I'm looking forward to playing with Kumar, even through the adversity. And when we spoken to both of them, they were both at probably the most difficult spots of their professional careers, baseball careers, period.
Yeah.
And they both had no doubt that they were going to see each other at the big league level. And maybe they didn't even, I don't even know if they thought it would happen this quick, but it's pretty
And
cool
this
to see.
just this further proves that it's all part of the process. Like
Yeah.
baseball, professional baseball is a process. And you cannot write a 22-year-old pitcher off because he, goes under the knife or because he has a rough year in double A. You
Yeah.
cannot do that. And the fact is these guys are both younger than 24 years old, and
They're 24.
They're both 24 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. They're both 24 years old. They're both in the major leagues, and they're both starting what I think can be very fruitful careers for both of them. And they were both essentially written off at a certain point.
And Rocker was added to our top 100 list I think about a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was just too easy to add him. Last thing on Rocker. I know it's a small sample, but it's not that small because it's 117 sliders at the end of the day. In his last 5 starts, his swinging strike rate, so the whiff rate on his slider, is 42%.
League
That's
average.
swinging strikes per pitch. Think about that.
Yeah.
117 of them, 42% whiff rate on a slider. Just for like reference for those listening, that's, I mean, average whiff rate on a slider in that league and between double and triple A is probably about 15%.
15.
Yeah, 16% for the slider. And he's at a comfortable 42%.
That's on par with like the best pitches in Major League Baseball. So like
Yep.
Felix Bautista's split when he was healthy was getting a 50% whiff rate. Devin Williams' changeup was getting a 45-50% whiff rate. That's what Kumar Rocker is rocking, pun intended, with that slider.
Unreal stuff. So that was a fun wrinkle to add to this. And man, that's must watch. I promise you, you're going to be floored with the stuff there. Is it going to be lights out? I don't know. Can't promise anything on the debuts anymore. I've learned that the hard way, especially after I said Brian Wu is going to come up and dominate. He gets shelled the first game.
Wasn't it Wu and Brandon Pfaadt?
What was it?
It was Wu and Brandon Pfaadt, right?
Yeah, I think both. I said they're going to come up and dominate. Both got shelled in their first start. Pfaadt took a little bit more time. Wu, I don't think has had a start even close to that since. So just, you never know how the first start goes, but that's going to be must-see TV with the 2 fastballs and then the slider really being basically 3 pitches in one with the way that he can manipulate it. We're going to get into Trevor Story, who makes his return for the Red Sox. Can he give them a little bit of a shot in the ass, or is it a little too late? Some Bichette conversation, Dipoto, and prospect promotions. But before that, a quick break. All right, on the positive side, it's awesome to see Trevor Story make it back before the end of the year. Brutal injury, seeing him go dive for that ball in the shallow outfield, shoulder. I don't know what the exact name of it was. It was some bone I never heard of that he broke, and it was rough. It was tough to see, and especially because he looked like he was starting to really settle in and play well. And it's been a big issue of just health. And that's why I think a lot of the performance has kind of waned for him in his career as a Red Sox. I think a big part of that has been health. A big part of the reason why he was not pursued as aggressively, I think, as he and maybe his agent would have hoped through his free agency was presumably because of the health concerns. And, that unfortunately has been validated for maybe some of the teams that have passed on him. But he's still just 31 years old. And he's back, in the fold here. How much of a difference do you think he can make for them? Or is it more of just like a next year thing? Like, what are they, four games out of a playoff spot here?
Yeah, 4.5.
Like, from objectively here, when I'm looking at the roster construction,
4.
Forget making the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
They need a right-handed hitting infielder, or just a good right-handed hitter in the worst freaking way. And, I mean, even if Trevor Story's a 120 WRC plus guy, 115 WRC plus guy, they just need a good right-handed hitting infielders preferred, but just right-handed hitter. I mean, when you go through the lineup, it's great. Jarren Duran, Rafael Devers, Wilyer Abreu, those are all lefties. Masataka Yoshida, lefty. Tristan Casas, lefty. Your righties are Tyler O'Neill, who's probably going to walk in free agency after this year. Connor Wong, who's been amazing offensively, which is crazy to say. And then it's Ceddanne Rafaela, who's a glove-first guy. So with the struggles of Vaughn Grissom and just kind of the way that this roster is shaken out, they really, really need a right-handed hitter and a good one. And Story can be that for them. It might be too little too late this year. He could give them a little bit of a spark and help make a push and make this thing interesting down the stretch. But I think it just has to help make Red Sox fans feel optimistic for next year when you want to Sharpie him into next year, that at least he's back for a few weeks and you can look ahead and say, okay, let's go, instead of, oh, let's see what he looks like in spring training and hope he's good to go at the beginning of the year. Like, he's clearly going to be good to go.
Yeah, and I do think it's a little too late here when it comes to 2024. They're 4 games out right now, but at the end of the day, do we really expect Story to hit the ground running and be awesome in the final 3 weeks? I don't think so, especially coming off of a shoulder thing. I'm just thinking in 2025, his presence, his health, and who Trevor Story is makes this puzzle very complicated for Craig Breslow, for Alex Cora, for everybody else. Christian Campbell is balling. He's going to be in the Red Sox 2025 plans. So your catching tandem is going to be Wong and Teal. Casas is at first base. Devers is at third base. Let's talk about the middle infield. Rafaela, Story, Campbell. Marcelo Meyer will likely spend the majority of the year in Worcester, I would assume.
Yeah, he needs more time, and another guy that has really battled health issues, just being able to stay on the field. So yeah, you don't want to rush him.
Does Rafaela stay in the infield, or does he go to center? Does that push Duran to left and then Williers and right? You're essentially anchored to Yoshida, but Roman Anthony looks pretty damn ready. All of a sudden, there becomes a not enough time to go around to everybody conversation in Boston, which is crazy because we've been talking about their offensive scarcity over the last year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah. And the contract situation with Story makes it tough. With the way that the game is trending now and how much contracts have inflated over the last couple of years, like, it's a little bit more palatable, but
I think somebody could take on Story when the time is right, because Story is 4 times the player that Baez is right now.
For sure. But if you're Breslow, are you a little apprehensive of paying a former star that, still is relatively young, like not for sure cooked, to go play for another team? Because they're going to have to eat some of the money. And the optics on the Chris Sale trade, not great at this point.
Brutal.
Do you want to do that here with the Trevor Story, who it was the same thing, right? Oh, Sale's never been able to stay healthy here. Sale's never been able to stay healthy here. Goes, look what he's doing right now. He's going to go win the Cy Young. I don't think that's going to happen with Story, where he's going to be like, one of the best shortstops in baseball if you go send him our second baseman, if you go send him elsewhere. But I do think that there has to be a level of apprehension here. He has a player option after 2025. I don't think he's going to be opting out of that. And he's due to make 22 and a half next year. He makes 25 in 2026, and he makes 25 in 2027. I think it's going to be hard to move 3 years, $72.5 million. But I think you go into next year, you feel good about him being there, because Christian Campbell, like, he's a breakout. He's been incredible. He's a breakout guy this year. So I think if you're to kind of Sharpie him into next year, you might be setting yourself up for failure. There's also some crazy swing mechanic aspects that, it's hard to argue against, but at this point, like, he's a breakout guy this year. It's been amazing. Do you thrust that guy right away into the big leagues, or do you want to see him do it in AAA for a few months next year as well? Meyer is going to still take some time, as you mentioned. I think the outfield is a lot more of a clutter and confusion than the infield. But to your point, like, do you use the return of Story to make you more confident to move off of an outfielder, because then you can push Rafaela to the outfield? Or do you slide Story over to second? Maybe that's better for his health. Rafaela plays short, and you go from there. It does give them options in the very sense that he's available, but they do have a lot of decisions to make. And I think it all starts really with, what the heck are they doing in the outfield? Because if we're talking about those Blue Sox up there, the player that's the most ready is the youngest, and he's an outfielder too, who happens to swing from the left side, by the name of Roman Anthony, who's arguably the top prospect in baseball as Junior Caminero, graduates. You put him in that conversation with Walker Jenkins and a few others. Is it more of an outfield conversation, or is it a conversation of how much do you believe in Trevor Story when he comes back? I think maybe these couple weeks here might help them make that decision in this offseason.
Yeah, I think so. Might be, I don't know. I look at Wilyer Abreu, and I love Wilyer Abreu defensively in a corner. But, like, could Abreu, going back to a guy that we were just talking about, could Abreu get you Jeffrey Springs and a prospect? Yeah, right? Could that be beneficial? I'm thinking outfield for pitching. You level up a little bit salary wise and you get a good prospect back from Tampa. Like that could be mutually beneficial here. And it
Yeah.
sucks to move off of Wilyer Abreu with that much time, but you got him as a throw in essentially in that
Yeah.
Christian Vasquez deal. That was not supposed to be a good deal, and it turned into a great deal for
It
you.
turned into a great deal.
If
And
things seem too trafficky, Wilyer Abreu for Jeffrey Springs and an upper minors guy could work.
I think you could make that, have a similar conversation with several different teams as well. Like I look at the Marlins, like there could be a line that something that lines up there.
No doubt.
There's several other teams that can make that happen. I think you got to roll with Story here, and the fact that he's gotten his defense to where he's gotten, and hopefully it sticks that way. Now that he comes back, but
Yeah.
it does make it fun. I think where Breslow has some interesting options here. And some things that they can do to set themselves up for success with the glut of outfield talent that they have.
Yeah.
Let's talk Bo Bichette, another guy that I think a team needs to figure out what the hell they're going to do with their infield here. And Bichette has made some headlines throughout this offseason. Not, I think, for any fault of his own. Maybe one thing that he probably could have phrased a little bit better, but he was kind of put on the spot. They asked him, like, would you be surprised if you got traded? Something along those lines. And he said,
Said no.
no. Like, I get it. I wouldn't be either. And he's just being honest. And he's probably a little frustrated with the conversations, given that he probably has always envisioned himself being a Blue Jay for
Right.
life. And now, when they kind of asked him what he wants in the rest of his career and just moving forward, I think he kind of tipped that, in terms of, hey, I do want to be a Blue Jay. And maybe these conversations have frustrated him. Clearly, there's a lot that needs to be figured out in Toronto, and that starts from the top. And then from the top, that'll help them figure out what's going to happen on the field with some of these players. And Bo Bichette's going to be a free agent after next season.
Yeah.
You ain't trading him after this year. It would be an all-time sell low because of how brutal he's been. And you might as well run it back next year. But this is what Bichette had to say when they asked, what he basically wants out of his career and what his ultimate goal is. And I quote, "When I had time to think about what I want, basically my ultimate goal really is to play with Vlad Guerrero Jr. forever, to win a championship with him, and to do that with this organization. I'm 100% committed to doing whatever it takes to accomplish those things. That's where I'm at." What do you think? I get it. I hear it. It's one thing to say it, but if the Blue Jays say, "Hey, yeah, we'll keep you around for, 5 years, 80 million," and he says, "No, I can go get way more on the open market," do you still feel that way? Probably not, and you shouldn't. So it becomes a question of, do the Jays see him as a building block? Do the Jays want to keep him? And what is his market value? I do like the idea of him, one, kind of campaigning for his extended career with Vladdy, who I guess clearly is like his best friend.
Yeah.
And in Toronto by how he plays next year. And also he's just campaigning for his pockets based on how he plays next year. You figure he's going to be locked in, and you'd imagine that it could be a really good bounce back year. If you're the Jays, do you try to buy low now though? Maybe how do you think this all shakes out?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. And Alex Verdugo asked Chaim Bloom for an extension when he was in Boston, and then he got traded. I think this is a lot better than the Verdugo situation. I think you've got a guy that is proven to be a 5-win player, was even a 4-win player last year. He's having a shit season. Who's to say that Bo Bichette can't bounce back from a shit season? I think that this guy can absolutely bounce back. Bo Bichette is incredibly talented. This year has sucked for the Blue Jays in the macro. Kevin Gausman sucked pre-All-Star break. Kevin Gausman doesn't suck. We know that. It's just been a brutal, brutal season for the team north. And I think that Bo Bichette has that bounce back in him. I would say it's more likely than not that Bo Bichette runs back a 4-win season than runs back a half a win season. I think this is the opportunity to buy low.
Yeah, and if he's willing to do whatever it takes, hey, well, here's a contract for 8 years, 100 and something million. We believe in you. Let's go.
So here's even my thought. Here's a contract because he's got 1 more year of control after this. Let's buy out 2 years on the open market, and we're giving you, 14 a year. Say yes.
Yeah. Or whatever it may be. Now the new QO, so you gotta inflate.
Right, exactly. So like 22. He gets a 3-year, $60 million deal.
Yeah.
You gonna say yes to this? Buys out 2 years of free agency.
He should. And that gives them a window to build around, this core. And we've talked about it. The core that they have here, like, is not bad. They've got some young position players who I think could contribute as soon as next year.
Yeah,
Spencer
man.
Horwitz freaking rakes. Like, I think there's no
Rakes.
questioning what he can do now. Like, that guy is a piece. He can hit. Dalton Varsho, at the very least, is going to be a guy that's going to give you league average offense, I think, at this point, and play elite defense in center field and fill that role. I love the addition we talked about of Joey Loperfido and what he could potentially bring to the table. It looks like Addison Barger is really settling in here all of a sudden. It's been so tough to watch David Schneider flounder this year, but I think it's very similar to the situation that we're talking about with a Bo Bichette, where it just doesn't seem like it's going to get right this year. And I don't know if the Blue Jays have the personnel to help get their hitters right. Offseason could do him wonders as well. I still think that guy's a piece for them. You know, they go get a Jake Bloss, who they sorely need a prospect like that. Like, that was incredible. So he's a guy that will definitely help fill out that rotation. You hope that Gausman can bounce back and be a little bit better. You got Barrios still, who's quite solid. Yariel Rodriguez all of a sudden looks like a decent piece. So, like, and then the bullpen, they've got a couple pieces there, but that's an easy area where you can make it better.
You didn't mention the best pitcher in a single month in like the modern era. Bowden Francis.
Yeah.
Trust my shit, let it eat.
Yep. Like, I think this could get better quicker than like a traditional like rebuild or anything. And it could get better in the next 2 years with Vlad Guerrero Jr. looking like one of the best hitters in baseball again. That also opens up a lot for them. And Will Wagner, I just think is a fun, bat to add to the fold as well. They've just got a lot of decent bats to mix around. So I would love to see them try to do that. And, for Bichette, still so young that he would, okay, you buy out a couple years, he's still going to hit the open market at a pretty young age, right? Like, he's 26. You buy out two years after next one. He's going to hit the open market still before he's 30 or right going into age 30. Great. Then get your big contract. Then you already guaranteed yourself 60. So I like what he's saying there. I'm sure his agent's kind of like, stop it, whatever.
Right.
But I think there's an aspect of that that's refreshing. And, I think there is a level of, look, the Blue Jays are a little corporate as well when we compare them to some of these other teams.
Yeah.
And I think there's a corporate value to keeping Vladdy and Bichette together. And look, Vladdy it's not as extreme as the struggles of Bichette. But if you look at the difference of what Vladdy was last year to what he is this year, it's pretty monstrous gap, right? And so if you can see a similar type of turnaround from Bichette, I feel more confident about him being able to do that. I think with a little bit of, as much as the contract year side of things could be interesting, it could also weigh on him a lot, considering how rough this year has been, and maybe the uncertainty of his future wouldn't help either. Having a couple years guaranteed where he's still with Vladdy and can kind of look forward and hope to try to win something with them for a few years. If I were the Jays, I would do it, and you might end up getting one of the better bargains in baseball if he is that 4-win player. And by the way, Vladdy's going to cost you 300 M's now, so I know they want to keep him probably. You're best suited short term. Extend, get a couple more years out of Bichette, and then you can give Vladdy that long-term mega deal.
I do not know Bo Bichette personally. I have not watched enough in terms of interviews that he's done, in terms of media availability that he's done to, know this. But based on strictly performance and watching things snowball on Bo Bichette, I feel like this is not the kind of guy that flourishes in a contract year. So I'm with you. Like, there could be that baseline of stress there for Bo Bichette next year that he could alleviate by agreeing to this buy low contract.
Yeah, and the comments kind of make me feel that way too, where it
right?
seems like it's just, and I get it. I'd be the same way, to be honest.
I'd be
It
the
just
same
doesn't
way.
seem like this whole situation just isn't really sitting great with him. And Toronto's an unreal city. Every player I talk to is actually loves the opportunity potentially to be able to play in Toronto. Yeah, I mean, like, they all have said like, oh, great place. I would not mind playing there at all.
The food scene, the cleanliness of the city, the people, like, it is an amazing city. Don't knock Toronto until you've been. And like,
Yeah,
the place is awesome. I would love to stay.
yeah. So it'll be an interesting offseason. The challenge though is who's going to be making that decision. And I don't think it should be Ross Atkins. So that's the other wrinkle.
That's a whole nother can of worms. Yeah.
Whole nother can of worms. Kind of similar in Seattle, kind of opposite side here of the country, or not the country of North America. When we talk about who's going to be making the decisions in Seattle, sounds like it's still going to be Jerry Dipoto.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the noise from Seattle. They want to keep him. They plan to keep him. I think it's so easy to say, oh, here we go. The Mariners are underperforming again. Let's get Jerry Dipoto out of here. I've been critical of some executives on here over the last couple episodes, but I think there's a tangible difference between the Mariners coming up a little bit short and the Cardinals coming up a little bit short.
Yes.
And I see a Mariners team that has tried a little bit. I've seen Dipoto kind of push, outside of the comfort zone with some of these additions. And I think that he's dealing with a very bizarre situation when you look at the home road splits and all of these things that are pretty weird, to the degree that like they need to figure that out. There's no doubting what he can do from a pitching perspective and what they've been able to build rotation wise. And that ain't easy to do. Like that is a value in itself. And this is the classic. Okay, you fired a Poto. Who you replacing him with?
Yep.
And okay, Heim Bloom, he's flawed. Like any name, float a bunch. They're flawed. Like they don't have a job. You promote somebody else that maybe hasn't failed yet. Okay, don't know how he's going to do yet or she's going to do yet either. So I understand giving Dipoto another season, but I think he gets one. I think he should get one more. I think he should get one more off season to figure out what the hell's going on home and road, how we can rectify that from an offensive perspective, and give him one more chance with this masterful rotation that he has been integral in putting together here to try to put together a half decent offense. One more year to figure that out. If he doesn't do it next year, then I'm down to start talking about other options.
Quantifying the home and road thing that you're talking about. Seattle in 75 road games at this point is hitting 229 as a team with a 700 OPS on the road. At home in 69 games, Seattle's OPS drops by more than 50 points from 700 to 646, and they're hitting 207 as a team at home. That 207 clip is the worst in baseball. That's 15 points worse than the Chicago White Sox when it comes to home batting average. I listened to Steven Souza Jr. on with our guys at the Marine Layer podcast. Lyle and TJ do a phenomenal job. And Steven Souza Jr. said something about the batter's eye that fascinated me. He said the batter's eye is at a slight angle in Seattle, and that felt really weird when Souza was playing in Seattle. Part of me thinks you sit every single hitter down that has played for the Seattle Mariners that like is willing to talk to you over the last half decade and say, why is it hard to hit here? And if Steven Souza Jr. and 30 other guys say, the batter's eyes had a weird angle, dude, like I just can't pick the ball up right, make a change to your ballpark. As weird as it sounds, the change may not be personnel. It may be your ballpark is fucked up behind the pitcher. Let's fix that.
Yeah.
It could be something as simple as that. Your ballpark, your batter's eyes at a weird angle. Let's make it straight and see if the hitters can hit here.
I mean, dude, it's not even really close in terms of what you look at park factor. It's dead last in terms of offense, right? Where 100 is league average and how a park can facilitate offense. They're 88. That's what T-Mobile Park has, right? Which is by far the lowest, like by far. I just, and also to validate the batter's eye aspect, yes, the pitchers that are throwing in Seattle are pretty darn good, but a 123, and I wish I could like have more context as to what these numbers mean. It's just as StatCast Park Effects show the observed effect of each displayed stat based on the events in the selected park. Each number is set to 100, and which is the average for that metric. And the park-specific number is generated by looking at each batter and pitcher controlled by handedness, comparing the frequency of that metric in the selected ballpark compared to the performance of those players in other ballparks. So it does normalize it anyways. So even if those pitchers are pitching a little bit more confident, the Seattle pitchers are at home, that's not going to make enough of a difference to where the strikeout rate is 23% higher, where in terms of like percentiles, right? Where the strikeout score on Baseball Savant is 123. When you're looking at park factors, again, 100 would be league average. Yeah. So clearly hitters are just struggling to see the ball. I think that's backed up pretty clearly through how much more swing and miss there is at T-Mobile Park, even relative to what these pitchers are getting swing and miss wise at other ballparks. So it does kind of account for that. And there's clearly something going on there. So that's something that they're going to have to figure out. But I think it makes sense. Like while you figure that out, and you should this year, it's inexcusable to take any longer to figure this shit out.
Right.
You got to figure out how to put together a decent offense too. And I get that makes it difficult, but it's not like that he's made all of the right decisions, right? Like a Jorge
No.
Polanco, probably not the right move. I
Colton
like the
Wong was
Arozarena trade.
Colton Wong going into 23 was a bad decision.
Bad. How'd you think that was going to go?
Right.
But like Teoscar, I don't think you can blame them for that. Look at how good he's been otherwise. Like he said that he didn't like hitting there. So figure that out, give him one more season, and then go from there. And I think he's earned that from what he's been able to build from a farm system perspective, the way they've drafted, and the staff that they have up there.
The other element of this, the last thing, is Justin Hollander is his number 2. Dipoto is the president of baseball operations. Justin Hollander is the GM. Hollander, by all accounts, is a very smart baseball mind. And then Scott Hunter, we talked about him and his ability to draft, the scouting director, Scott Hunter. They're as good at drafters as we have in Major League Baseball.
Oh, yeah.
The last bit. Like, they nail it all the freaking time. Like, yeah, give them another go. I don't think there's too much wrong with that front office. I like that you point out your sentiments around Jerry Dipoto and your sentiments around John Mozeliak are different. Because John Mozeliak is spearheading an outdated front office.
Yes.
Jerry Dipoto is spearheading a front office that has gotten the hitting moves wrong over the last couple seasons. There's a huge difference there.
With a variable that is very clearly bizarre.
Been a hindrance. Yeah.
The only variables I see in St. Louis are created by themselves. So
it's too hot. It's too hot in August.
Is Contreras a catcher? Like any of those things. Is Jordan Walker a major leaguer? Figure it all out. Right. But last but not least, we're talking promotions. Thankfully, Jordan Walker was promoted again, and he's gonna stay. They're gonna let this guy be a big leaguer over there, but we're not talking about that. We're going to talk about some of the most notable minor league promotions, and several of our top prospects are moving on up, including our top pitching prospect in Jackson Jobe and our number 3 overall prospect in Walker Jenkins.
Yeah, dude. So Jobe is going up to AAA. We should start with him here because Jobe put together his best start of the year, right? In his final AA start, he went 7 one-hit innings, or was it 6 one-hit innings? He was phenomenal.
7 innings of, I don't know if they adjusted it yet. 7 innings, 3 hits.
Okay.
Did you see the 2 other hits? I tweeted the videos.
Yes, I did. And I was...
Whoever the scorekeeper is needs to be held accountable. And please don't fire him. Just her or whoever. Keep their job. Just let them know that when... I think 1 was a hit because the shortstop didn't touch it. The second one, Gage Workman definitely touched. Yeah. When it's a fly ball... and the shortstop's got his feet maybe 2 feet into the grass, and he drops it, it's probably not a hit. So back-to-back in the first inning. Pop-ups, I think the sun was bad. Gage Workman, a good defender, dropped 2. 1, I guess, is a hit because no one touched it. The other one, he definitely touched it. Those were 2 of the 3 hits. Like that was it. So it really was 7 innings, 1 hit, 2 walks, 8 Ks. This guy's the best pitching prospect in baseball. He has battled some efficiency issues, which is very uncharacteristic for him over some stretches this year. He talked about it on the call up with us about how he's shifted on the rubber to try to get more vert on his fastball, and he's seen the results there. But it's been harder to kind of rein it back in and be as consistent strike throwing wise, which we've seen him be as consistent as anybody strike throwing wise in the minors this year. That has taken a bit of a step back, but over the last 5 starts, filling it up at a 67% clip. Fastball and cutter have been a 72% strike rate. Like he's right back to where he has been. And I think it's great that he's going to get a taste of AAA. Yeah. And look, I think if he looks really good out of the gate in spring training, you could make the case for him to be an opening day guy, just because I don't think that there's much else he has to prove other than just being efficient and filling up the zone with everything. But they also have plenty of arms up there, so it'll be fun to see how they go about it. But if he dominates in 3 starts here in AAA, Jack, like, with a strong showing in spring training, could this guy break camp?
Yes. Firmly,
Get that PPI pick because he's thrown in Comerica. I know it's a hitter award generally when you look at the Rookie of the Year history, but it's going to be a weird year next year where there's not that many bats relative to other years. I'd be all over getting Jobe there, and I think he's got a great chance of getting you that draft pick, which Scott Harris wants the way he's drafted.
No doubt. Caminero, Jobe, Roman Anthony, gap. Everybody else in the American League. You're fighting with 2 of those guys, and you're hoping that Jackson Jobe has a better season than one of Caminero or Roman Anthony. I think the award next year is Caminero's to lose. Like, I think he should
Yeah,
be
it's
minus
been his
money
award to lose. This is like I feel like
for 3 years at this point.
I've picked him 3 years. It'll be the third year I pick him next year.
But
So yeah, it's his to lose for sure.
Caminero, I think Caminero is certainly the favorite, and I would assume Caminero wins. Then it's Job and Roman Anthony. I feel better about Jackson Job putting together a phenomenal season as a pitcher in Detroit than I do Roman Anthony putting together a phenomenal rookie season with the Boston Red Sox in the American League East. Seeing the
Well, he's
Rays
so
rotation.
blocked still too.
He's super blocked. So we'll see, if they even want to get him up at that point. I think Job has a clear runway to a top 2 finish, which gets them that pick. I totally think that makes sense. The 7 innings of essentially one hit ball came against a Reading lineup on the road that had Justin Crawford, who is hitting the shit out of the ball in Double A. 331, hitting the shit meaning like, I don't know about EVs, but he's hitting 331 in Double A at this point. Aiden Miller, Gabriel Rincones, Otto Kemp. Those are 4 guys that have been good performers in minor league baseball so far this year. So he did this against a good lineup. But yeah, he gets to AAA. I assume he shoves because everybody that sees him is inferior to him at this point in minor league baseball.
Yeah.
And then he goes to spring training. I do think that there is a ton of incentive to have him break camp.
Isn't there a chance that Caminero will exceed that rookie eligibility? You'd think that the Rays would be a little bit more careful about that, but
is there a chance?
I think it's possible. I think it's possible.
What is it, 130 ABs to exceed rookie eligibility?
And it's just days of service, and I think they called him like 3 days early. I'm really interested to see. So to keep him under 45 career service days, because I think that's what he needed remaining. They would have had to push his call. This is from Baseball America. They would have had to push Caminero's call-up date back to August 26th, but instead they called him up August 13th, I guess, to try to save the season there. So there's a chance he loses his rookie eligibility. Wow. And if that happens, then that would be really interesting, because it'd be very, very easy. I think competition-wise, of course, there's always going to be people who pop up and make waves, and we saw that this year. No, I don't think a ton of people had Austin Wells at the top of their list, or even a Cowser at the top of their list. So it'll be interesting, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Rays would say, "All right, season's over. Caminero, sorry, back to Durham. Go work on your defense."
Definition: rookie eligibility by MLB.com. A player shall be considered a rookie unless he has exceeded any of the following thresholds in a previous season or seasons: 130 at-bats or 50 innings pitched. Junior Caminero is at 126 at-bats right now. He plays another game, he exhausts it.
I'm shocked they did that.
How did they fumble that badly?
I don't know, and we were clowning them for like waiting so long. At that point, you waited so long, and I know he was banged up. Like,
just wait longer.
At that point, yeah, wait. Not sure what they were doing there, but I applaud it. I mean, good for Caminero. Like, I'm glad they did that. But yeah, wild.
Wow.
Few more notable promotions. Walker Jenkins.
Yes.
He heads to Double A. Again, we've got him at number 3, Twins prospect. He's been fantastic of late. And they wanted him to be healthy. Another guy that, take the time at the complex, maybe hung out in low A a little bit longer because of how banged up he had been at the beginning of the season, missed some time. And then quickly, gets to high A and quickly just mashes through there. And I think it was 33 games there, mashed there, and they brought him already up to Double A as that season comes to an end. Last 20 games, the outfielder has an OPS of 1,012. He's not chasing. He's hitting the ball hard to all fields. Will steal some bags. He looks good in center. So that just looks like one of the better prospects in baseball. And by the way, doesn't turn 20 until February 19th.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's balling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited to see him, man. I don't know if they're in a postseason battle in Wichita, the old wind surge, but it'll be good to get a week of Double A ball under his belt. Him and Sebastian Walcott, both like very young guys. And I know you're going to bring up Walcott as well, but like both those guys getting up and getting that experience for the tail end of the season, I think is huge.
Well, Sebastian Walcott, the Texas Rangers, he doesn't turn 19 until March 14th.
Wow.
So this is a dude that, I mean, in terms of raw power, he's got as much as any you're going to see from a teenage prospect. and it's been amazing to see him really settle in. He's going to swing and miss, but the patience, how that's coming along here, his last 40 games as an 18-year-old at high A, 306, 356, 519 slash line. He has cut down the strikeouts, cut that strikeout rate down to 21% in that stretch. The home runs haven't even totally been there because he's still getting comfortable in terms of elevating consistently, only 3 home runs in that span, but 5 triples and 15 doubles. He hits the ball so freaking hard. He's still just 18. He's 6'4". This guy has as much upside as any prospect in baseball, and he's going to reach double A as he's closer to 18 than 19 years old.
It's amazing. I feel like we just talked about 2 guys that at some point are going to battle for the number 1 prospect in baseball title.
Yeah.
So
what's crazy too is we were just talking about Yordany Monegro and how nasty he's been.
It was yet to allow he didn't allow a run for like a month and a half.
He hit a ball 115 miles per hour off of him.
Man, probably a line out though. It doesn't matter how hard you hit a fly out to a left, right? Doesn't matter how hard you throw a ball 4. And quote Mike Rizzo.
Doesn't matter how hard you line out or something. That would be the worst mantra.
Still an out.
Yeah. It was a double down the line, by the way.
There we go.
Any other notable promotions before we call it an episode?
Cam Smith to double A. Holy hell.
My goodness, man. He got promoted right after we were talking about him and we checked in on all the draft guys, by the way, in the first round. Checked in on how all of them are doing so far in their pro debuts on the call up. Go check that episode out. Yeah, we just talked about Cam Smith and how quickly he got to high A. Well, I hope you enjoyed him in South Bend, folks. Know some really good fans out there. I hope you soaked in every moment of it. Get
ready to learn Smokey, buddy.
Yeah, a little bit of I don't know. How's the ballpark out there in Tennessee?
I don't know. It's in Knoxville. I like Knoxville. I thought it was cool. I've never experienced a Tennessee Smokies game.
South Bend is an elite ballpark, though, especially for high
A. Their team store is in a gutted synagogue. Do you know that?
No.
Yeah, like outfield.
Really
I think
cool.
left field corner. They like gutted us. I think it's a synagogue, either a synagogue or church. I think it was a synagogue, and they still have the stained glass in there, and it's just the Cubs den with the team store.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah,
really
right.
Fun. It's a very cool ballpark. When I went there, I didn't even notice that. There's a lot going on. For high A, it's awesome. But that'll do it for this episode. We have, of course, 3 more coming this week. Plenty to talk about as we get down to the final stretch here of the big league season and the minor leagues as well. We're talking about plenty on the call up as well. So go check those episodes out. We got a loaded week, 4 episodes of the call up. Generally we do 2 to 3. So busy week over there as well. Excited to kind of make up for some lost time, but any final thoughts, Jack, before we wrap this thing up?
Yes. We are talking before this game happens, but you guys will be able to prove this prediction wrong. Valente Belloso against Paul Skeens in Pittsburgh. I have 4-2 Marlins, 4 runs in the 8th.
Just because that's what they keep doing to Skeens. It's crazy.
I know.
It's crazy. I'm excited for that ball game. Obviously, get to see how Griff fares against Paul Skeens. Tough one. You get Zach Wheeler a couple days ago, and now you got Skeens. Welcome to the show. But there might not be a bigger dichotomy in a pitching matchup this year than Belloso versus Skeens.
I don't know. Hendricks and Skeens was kind of crazy. We got that one like 4 times. Kyle Hendricks, Paul
Skeens. Yeah, they just kept running that one back.
Yeah, Kyle Hendricks and Walker Buehler tonight, which is interesting too.
Oh, that'll be fun too. See Walker can make it 3 in a row. Great starts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Belloso is one of the more surprising stories, and I'm going to continue to root for him because it makes no freaking sense.
No sense.
So, we'll check in tomorrow when it's probably 10-1 Pirates.
Yeah.
And Belloso somehow has that 89 mile per hour fastball normalized there. But Brian De La Cruz revenge game, who knows? Great addition there by the Pirates. That was a really good deal. That'll do it for this episode. Peter and I will talk to you, right? Peter and I? Yeah. Sounds about right. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Everything you need in the episode description.